Well, I am about as happy as you guys might expect me to be to report that it seems that Amphibia has gotten pretty successfully back on track as of this week. I haven't hated the recent run of episodes, but I definitely thought they were missing something. And these episodes, I don't feel the same way about them. I feel like they're pretty stinking good. Weirdly enough, out of the two, though, I have less to talk about Mother of Olms, the big lore episode, because, and I'll get this out of the way right at the start, Mother of Olms felt very much like the beginning of something, like the beginning of a new era for the show, where at least two of our three main human characters know the prophecy about them, finally, after all this time. And I'm not going to delve too much into the prophecy here, because I have a couple videos planned. They're all swimming around in my head, and I'm having trouble sorting out the details. But I have a couple videos planned for this and for the Owl House, and I do want to talk about the prophecy in more detail in a separate video, so I'm gonna leave that for that. But they do now know the prophecy, and then we don't even get like the 1 week break between episodes for us to imagine that they had a conversation about it off screen before we just move on to an episode that's not about them dealing with the prophecy at all. And there didn't need to be one. There didn't need to be an episode immediately after that where they were dealing with prophecy, because again, we could have imagined that conversation started off screen, but because they stuck another episode right after this, it felt a little anticlimactic. What I would have done, and this isn't just because I did think some of the recent episodes were a little lackluster, I would have dropped one of them and put Olmtown Road and Mother of Olms in the same week. It just works better that way. But this is still a good episode, and I think it's good specifically because it's not really what we expected it to be at all. The Mother of Olms is not the character that we were led to believe she was. She's not some hard ass who is terrible to outsiders. She's actually very welcoming. And it seems like the other Olms were talking up how dangerous she is just to have a laugh at these new shaky allies that they've started to ally themselves with. In fact, she's this sweet old lady. She just happens to be a really giant sweet old lady. Like, she even hits on Hop Pop a little bit. It's extremely adorable. And rather than some long, profound conversation with her, we get a, like, into the person's body kind of episode. But instead of our characters shrinking down, they literally go inside of her brain, like, at their full size, because she's just that giant, to apply a balm to her brain to try to help her remember the prophecy that she was tasked with keeping. And they don't do a ton with it, because it's just a 12-minute episode, but it was pretty funny. They did some pretty funny stuff with it. In fact, whereas I felt like a lot of the humor in the last few episodes kind of fell flat when they shot for it, I thought the humor in this one worked really well. Like offering Hop Pop some hot tea, and then cutting to him using it like a jacuzzi to heal his sore joints was objectively pretty hilarious. I also liked how the main, problem of the episode was that the Mother of Olms is old. She's having trouble remembering the thing that she's supposed to remember because she's getting up in years. And the B plot about Hop Pop was about how he's also old. It's always been kind of unrealistic that he's been so involved in the physical altercations that this group has gotten involved in the past, because he is an old man. And this episode's finally addressing that, saying, hey, he's starting to feel that. Let's develop ways that he might be of use to this group that aren't purely physical. It was really cool. It was a cool character bit that tied directly into the main plot of the episode. And the prophecy itself, while it more or less just told the audience stuff that they already knew, a la the reveal that Philip is Emperor Bellows over in the Owl House, it was still nice. It was still nice to see it visualized, and it was nice to see it, or hear it, I guess, spoken out, you know? I was going to say see it written out, but like, it was amphibian script, so we couldn't really read it. But it was cool to see in-story acknowledgement of, what's it called, the core, the thing that's possessing Marcy right now, from someone who isn't like Andreas or Marcy, right? And it was cool to get confirmation, finally, we've suspected this for a while, but it was cool to get confirmation of it finally, that Aand, because she's still connected to her stone, can restore the connection between the other two and their stones. But she has to learn to control her powers first, which means, hopefully, we're going to get a training episode. I love training arcs. It's going to be fun. It was just a good, fun, silly little episode that also progressed the story. I enjoyed it a lot. But more interesting, I think, from a character standpoint especially, is Grime's Pupil, the second episode of this week. And that's because, let's talk about Sasha's Angels again for a minute. I think, in retrospect, my main issue with Sasha's Angels is that while we did get some development for Sasha and Aand in the episode, it was mostly in the background, and it didn't really tie into the development of the minor characters featured in the episode, aside from just the situation the minor characters found themselves in facilitated that other development, like literally, because they were in that situation, Aand and Sasha got the chance to talk and develop. And I've been talking about this a lot recently with Steven Universe videos too, because I still make those, guys. And in retrospect, looking back at Steven Universe as a whole, the show never really developed a lot of its minor characters into less minor characters to justify their development, and it didn't ever tie their development enough into the development of the main characters to justify using them as often as it did. There are a couple of exceptions, but not enough, and it makes a lot of the episodes with those minor towny characters, in retrospect, feel unnecessary and boring. And that's because the purpose of a minor character in something, aside from like facilitating gags or filling out space in a crowd or whatever, is to facilitate development for the main characters. And if that leads to the minor character developing enough that they become a main character too, so be it. That's great for them, and it's great for the audience if they like that character, but that just means that they have elevated themselves beyond their purpose. Not that they deserve development all on their own before they were an important character. And as much as I do like the minor characters that we talk about in Sasha's Angels, they are not main characters. And I don't feel like they deserve the majority focus of an entire episode, no matter how much I like them. But in Grime's Pupil, we have Sprig, who is a main character. I would argue that he's sort of the Amphibia equivalent right now of one of the three girls. And then we have Grime, who I would argue is not a main character yet. He's still like a fairly major recurring character, but he's not really a main character yet. And both of them develop in this episode, but because they're developing parallel to each other, Sprig is developing just as much as Grime, and their developments are feeding directly into each other. It works. It works really well, in fact. This whole episode is about the Frog Army of Wartwood trying to unite with Grime's sister's army of Toads so that they'll have a stronger base with which to challenge Andrus whenever the war actually starts outright. But Grime's sister is annoyed by the fact that her brother lost to a frog. Meanwhile, Grime and Sprig, who were chosen to be the delegates to her and her army to show that frogs and toads can work together, can't work together because they still have all that animosity from the time that Sprig beat Grime, and also from that period of time when Grime was exploiting Sprig and his family and all of his friends. Which Sprig actually brings up in the episode. He has this attitude throughout the entire episode of, screw you, you suck, and have always sucked. And it was very appropriate. It was funny, but also very appropriate because Grime deserves it. Grime was a tyrant for a long time. And I would argue that, like, he's definitely making progress towards not being that person anymore, but he's still kind of an asshole. But because they still have this animosity between them about this very specific thing, that fight that they had that Sprig won, when Grime challenges his sister to win the right to use her army, she instead challenges Sprig as his proxy, because she wants to beat the guy that beat her brother. So Grime and Sprig have to train together so that Sprig is prepared to fight her because she's even stronger than Grime is. And throughout the course of their training, they learn things about each other. They come to appreciate each other more. Grime learns how frogs fight, what they're capable of, what their abilities are, and he comes to appreciate them and help Sprig develop them into a working fighting style. And Sprig even learns a little bit about how toads fight. and applies it back to his fighting style as well, making himself overall much stronger, which is a thing that Sprig cares about. This is a dangerous world that he lives in, just day to day, not even mentioning the war that they're involved in now. And he wants to be able to fight to protect his friends and family. And he wants to be strong enough to travel this world and explore it if he wants to. Those are important things to him, and Grime helps him towards achieving that goal. And what it really comes down to is they both overcome their prejudices. Because while I would say that the frog's prejudice against the toads is a little more justified, because again, the toads have sucked for a long time, they're both kind of racist towards each other. They both think very little of each other, and that's bad, regardless of the context. And while there wasn't ever a moment in this episode where Grime said, "I'm really sorry that I was a tyrant over your people for such a long time," and it would have been nice to hear that, I never really expected to, because, Grime, personally and culturally, is the kind of person who, if he's going to apologize to you, he's going to apologize to you through his actions. And protecting the people of Wortwood, fighting with them, and then going against his own desires to help Sprig, opening himself up to Sprig and growing as a person, that's a way in which he has started to apologize to Sprig through his actions. Their banter back and forth in this episode, their heated antagonistic banter, was also pretty funny. And Sasha cheerleads the cage match between Sprig and Grime's sister, whose name I do not remember, but that's beside the point. And she was actually, I think the best word for it is probably cute, which, Sasha is not a character I would ever call cute, but her being a cheerleader was pretty cute. And also pretty funny. There's a funny little sequence about it. The action was pretty impressive. The fight, in particular, once we got right down to it, was pretty impressive. And in the end, Sprig wins and impresses the toads enough that they do decide to fight with the frogs. He has united these two peoples in a way where now all of them have a chance to come to open themselves and appreciate each other the same way that he and Grime have. It's very possible that Sprig didn't just win the use of an army in an upcoming conflict, but literally a new age for their joint peoples. And that's pretty freaking cool. Especially considering that we know that there used to be greater friendship and unity between at least some instances of these peoples, with Beryl and Andreas and that mysterious little girl frog that we saw in that old portrait. It's possible that Sprig and Grime here are very literally reforging that old lost bond. As you can tell, I liked these episodes a lot. I don't know that I would say that Amphibia is back in top form yet. I still want to watch a couple more episodes and make sure it doesn't slide back into that crevice of mediocrity that I feel some of the previous episodes fell into. But this is definitely a tentative return to form. And I know some of you will probably disagree with me on that, because some of you guys are more fond of those episodes that I didn't really get much out of than I was. But at the very least, I hope we can agree that these episodes were, regardless, good episodes. That said, if you have seen The Mother of Olms and Grime's Pupil, what did you think of them? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.